Next tonight, campaigners for drug policy reform have told ITV News that most politicians are out of step with public opinion on the issue. This week marks 50 years since the Misuse of Drugs Act gained royal assent, which has criminalised drug users for the last half-century.
Well, a recent YouGov survey claims more than half of adults would prefer substance misuse to be treated as a health issue instead. In Nick Smith's second report, he's been investigating the different approaches that we could take.
George Charlton is a drug initiative consultant who spent many years supporting those with misuse problems in County Durham. Throughout that time, he's seen at first hand what a criminal approach to the issue can do to vulnerable addicts.
Criminalising people for taking drugs does not work. What we know is 1 in 4 people in the prison system are currently in there for non-violent crimes to do with drugs. They come back out and they use drugs. It doesn't work what we're doing. So we have to have a different approach where people can get drugs legally, where they're not going to get criminalised for taking them.
So what could we do differently? 20 years ago, Portugal decriminalised all drugs, meaning those caught in possession did not enter the criminal justice system, but were instead offered treatment pathways.
What we can say with Portugal is that, when they made those changes, not only did the sky not fall in, but, the sky became somewhat brighter for everybody. The use of drugs went down. They had some of the highest uses in Europe, and that's fallen to some of the lowest levels of heroin use. They had some of the highest levels of drug-related deaths. They fell. So across the board on most measures, we had better outcomes for the individuals involved. We had better outcomes for the society as well.
But for many who want reform, decriminalisation is only a halfway house, as it doesn't take drug supply out of criminal hands. With such widespread use in society, some are calling for them to be fully legalised so they can be safely regulated.
The illicit drug trade is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. Now, that could not be supported by poor people who are down and out. That's supported by middle to upper class people. We have to think about, as responsible adults, how do we minimize or decrease the likelihood of people getting in trouble with drugs through better education, also better services such that you don't have drugs on the street that are tainted with potential toxins. All of those sort of things is areas where we can intervene if we were serious about this problem.
A growing number of MPs are calling for a policy rethink. The question is whether it's ever likely to happen.
I think personally people are frightened of the issue. We've got to engage with the real public policy questions at stake here because they are of massive importance, are killing thousands of our citizens every year, are costing us tens of billions of pounds worth of crime and victims of crime, and they are meaning that millions of people are not getting the medical treatments they should do, and we need to address that fast.
Well, the government has admitted that urgent action is needed. And in response to a recent Health Select Committee report highlighting that drug deaths were at an all-time high, they promised to increase efforts on prevention, treatment and recovery. But government officials stopped short on some of the recommendations, saying they don't favour any policy to decriminalise drugs or legalise any of them. And some agree with this approach. Think tank the Centre for Social Justice says a policy to facilitate drug use could further exacerbate the problem.
What we do see with the threat of legalisation is a massive uptake in the amount of consumption of dangerous drugs in our community. And that's problematic because while we must draw a distinction between recreational use and addiction, it's right to say that a large proportion of people will become addicted that wouldn't otherwise.
Whichever side of the drugs debate you land on, the conversation is not going away. And after 50 years of the same approach, questions continue over whether our policy still reflects the reality of today's attitudes. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Now, one industry that's really suffered during the pandemic, amongst many others, is weddings. Venues, bands, other services have had to put their